The episode opened with the appearance of a striking young man, whose sharp posture and distinct uniform immediately suggested his rank as a captain in the Navy. Every line of his frame spoke of rigorous training and unwavering discipline, while the embroidered emblem glinting on his collar confirmed his station, a mark of authority and respect recognized by every soul serving under the naval banner. He moved with quiet purpose through the busy station, yet the focus quickly shifted away from him, drawn instead to a simple letter held in weathered hands. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, penned by an elderly woman whose words carried the heavy weight of time, longing, and deep disappointment. Addressed to her grandson, Theo, Duke of Betterburg, the letter poured out her sorrow and heartache. She had sent message after message, waiting with hope that never faded, yet not a single reply had come. What began as affectionate concern had slowly turned into aching pain, her love stretched thin by silence that felt like deliberate distance, as if the grandson she cherished had forgotten she even existed. Within the naval station, uniformed men hurried about their tasks, voices calling out orders and reports, the air thick with the familiar rhythm of duty, salt spray, and creaking wood. But Theo stood apart from the noise and movement, holding the letter as if it were just another routine document to be filed away and forgotten. His expression remained calm, almost impassive, giving nothing away of what he read or felt. The pages continued, reminding him that his summer leave was approaching, and it was expected he would return to Betterburg without delay. Both the royal family and his grandmother counted the days until his arrival, eager to see him once more, and eager, too, to push forward with plans they had been weaving for years. Then came the passage repeated in every letter, the request that had become a constant refrain. He was to give careful, serious thought to the marriage proposal formally sent by the royal household. It was a matter they deemed vital to his future, to the continuation of his line, and to the stability of his title, mentioned again and again as if repetition alone could make him agree. When he finished reading, a faint, amused smile touched his lips. He murmured softly to himself that his grandmother still refused to abandon hope, determined to see him settled and wed no matter how many times he ignored the subject, or how clearly he showed no interest in such matters. It was here his full name was revealed, Theo Tiam Patambal, marking him clearly as the central figure around whom the story turned. His closest friend Rivers stood nearby watching him, and now stepped closer with a knowing look, his hands resting casually behind his back. He asked lightly if the letter contained yet another reminder about finding a wife, a question that made Theo laugh dryly and fold the paper carefully before tucking it inside his coat. He described these messages as nothing more than an annual ritual, a tiresome drama he was forced to endure every time his leave drew near. To him, the constant pressure, urging him to marry, to become engaged, or even just to begin courting someone, had grown exhausting and utterly meaningless. It felt less like care and more like a transaction, a duty he was born into but had never wanted. River nodded thoughtfully, remarking that despite all the expectation and talk, Theo rarely showed even a flicker of interest in dating or pursuing anyone. It was a mystery to everyone around him. As a captain and a duke, he had received countless love letters from admirers working in the Admiralty offices, women who admired his rank, his looks, and his reputation for being fair and sharp-minded. He could have chosen a partner easily, whenever he wished, yet he remained completely detached, treating affection as something distant and unnecessary. River pressed him gently, wondering aloud why he kept himself so far removed from matters that seemed to matter so much to everyone else, and whether there was a deeper reason behind his indifference. Theo adjusted his cap, his fingers brushing the brim as his expression shifted from amusement to something far more serious, distant and sharp, as if he were looking at something no one else could see. He replied quietly that every part of it felt hollow, empty, and even terrible. When River asked him to explain what he meant, Theo spoke plainly, dismissing the very concept of love itself as useless nonsense, a fleeting fancy that meant nothing and led nowhere, something people invented to fill empty spaces in their lives. He did not dwell on the topic, sensing it would only lead to more questions he did not wish to answer, instead changing the subject swiftly by asking about River's own plans for the coming vacation. River told him he intended to travel south to Gloucester Castle, a grand old estate surrounded by forests and rolling hills, where his uncle worked as a gardener in service to the wealthy Summer family. His uncle had mentioned needing extra hands to manage the grounds during the busiest season, when fruit needed picking, hedges trimming, and flower beds tended, and River had decided to spend his break helping out rather than lingering in the city. Theo stared at him in genuine disbelief, questioning why anyone would choose to spend their holiday laboring in the sun instead of resting and enjoying their freedom, especially after months of hard duty at sea. River simply smiled and answered that he preferred being useful over idling away his days with nothing to do. He added, too, that the castle grounds were beautiful, filled with fresh air, wild flowers, and shaded paths, and bordered by a clear, flowing river perfect for swimming and cooling off in the heat of summer, a place where time seemed to move slower and lighter. As River spoke, Theo's mind drifted away, carried back to a memory from years before, one that had stayed with him ever since, quiet but unshakable. He remembered a quiet conversation in a garden much like this one, words spoken to him when he was still young, that had cut deeper than he had let on. Someone, an older friend, a mentor he had long since lost touch with, had told him then that he seemed entirely without passion for life, that he approached every situation, every person, and every feeling with cold, precise calculation, as if everything were a problem to be solved rather than an experience to be lived. Young Theo had asked what exactly he meant by that. Confused by the observation, unaware that his own heart had already begun to build walls around itself. The person had predicted that he would continue living in that detached, unfeeling way forever, never able to truly connect or understand what it meant to feel deeply, to care without caution, or to want something simply because it mattered to him. When Theo had asked how they could be so certain, they told him to stop overthinking every detail, stop analyzing every word and action until the meaning was stripped away and nothing remained but logic. Gently, he had tapped the center of his chest over his heart and told him to follow what he felt instead of what he reasoned. He had promised that if he ever learned to listen to his true desires, he would find something wonderful and extraordinary, something that would change everything and make all the distance and silence worth it. Those words had remained lodged in his mind through every year that followed, through every promotion, every voyage, and every letter urging him to marry. Returning to the present moment, Theo turned fully toward River, his earlier indifference replaced by a sudden spark of decision, as if that old memory had finally found its moment. With a confident, bright smile, he removed his cap and held it loosely in one hand, announcing that he had completely changed his own plans. He would accompany River to Gloucester Castle and spend the entire summer there working alongside him, away from the city, away from duty, and away from the endless talk of marriage and obligation that had weighed on him for so long. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of genuine curiosity about what lay ahead. Far away from the naval station, within the sprawling, lush grounds of Gloucester Castle, an older man laughed heartily, his voice rich with pleasure and satisfaction that bordered on greed. He sat observing a young woman who remained seated quietly nearby, her posture modest and calm, her hands folded neatly in her lap. He admired her simple yet graceful demeanor and the soft beauty of her face, thinking to himself that her guardian, the Count, had raised her exceptionally well and shaped her into someone truly captivating, polite, gentle, and visually striking enough to be the envy of every woman within 100 miles. This was Vanessa Siren Summers, the female lead of the story, who sat with her gaze lowered, looking sad, withdrawn, and completely unaware of the greedy, leering gaze fixed upon her. Her mind was heavy with worries she dared not speak aloud, knowing that every choice regarding her life had long been taken out of her hands. Vanessa's uncle stepped closer to the older man, speaking in low, eager tones as he referred to the agreement they had made, suggesting they move forward with their plans just as they had discussed, with the wedding to be held before the summer ended. But the elderly count wore a dark, devious expression, his face flushing with thoughts that were unkind, inappropriate, and deeply cruel. He spoke aloud, declaring that before any wedding could take place, before he would commit himself fully or sign over any part of the settlement, he required absolute proof that his future bride was pure, untouched, and unblemished in every way. Vanessa heard every single word, and her heart sank heavily within her chest, the insult hanging in the air like a heavy, suffocating cloud. Her uncle quickly objected, claiming that to question her virtue so openly was a deep insult not only to her, but to the honor of their entire family, to the name they carried and the reputation they had spent generations building. Yet the count dismissed his concern with a wave of his hand, his tone sharp and unyielding, making it clear he would not budge. He reminded them that although this would be his second marriage, he refused to accept anything less than perfection. He would never take what he considered to be damaged goods into his home or his life, nor would he pay the agreed amount for anything less than absolute purity. Desperate to keep the arrangement from falling apart, terrified of what would happen if this marriage failed to happen, her uncle hurried to reassure the count, promising repeatedly that Vanessa's purity was beyond doubt and fully guaranteed. He insisted that the Summer family would meet every wish, fulfill every desire, and satisfy every demand the count might have, no matter what it was or how inconvenient it might be. But the older man continued with his crude insinuations, asking who could truly vouch that she had never been with a man, never been touched, never strayed from what he considered proper, or hidden any secrets from those who controlled her life. He mentioned knowing a person with a strange, special ability, someone who claimed to discern such truths instantly, with just a look or a touch, and implied strongly that he intended to use this service to verify her status beyond any doubt, no matter how humiliating it might be for her. Each cruel and degrading word cut into Vanessa, dragging her mind back to painful memories she had spent years trying to forget. Memories of a childhood defined by powerlessness and the knowledge that she had never truly belonged to herself. She remembered sitting stiffly inside a train carriage, the rhythm of the wheels on the tracks mixing with the cold, unfeeling voice of a lawyer reading from official documents that would change her life forever. She had been so young then, barely understanding what was happening, only knowing that everything familiar was being taken away. The lawyer had explained clearly that under the strict terms of inheritance laws, the title, lands, and wealth belonging to the former Count of Somerset had been legally transferred to her uncle, Mr. Vane. As a result, Lady Vanessa had no legal claim to any of it, not the title, not the land, not even the family name she had been born with. The papers stated plainly that until she reached adulthood, Mr. Vane held absolute, full authority over every part of her existence. He controlled what she ate, what she wore, how much money she could spend, where she went, and whom she spoke to. Most devastating and crushing of all was the final clause. The decision regarding whom she would marry rested entirely and solely with him, a right he intended to use for his own gain rather than her happiness. The lawyer had finished speaking with a polite, hollow hope that fortune would favor her in the future, leaving young Vanessa feeling small, trapped, and completely without control over her own destiny. Back in the present, Vanessa could bear no more. She fled from the room, her steps hurried and unsteady, desperate to escape the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of the mansion and the people within it, people who were supposed to be her family, yet treated her worse than a favored pet. She found herself out in the large, sprawling garden, gasping for fresh air as she tried to calm the racing of her heart and the sting of tears in her eyes. With one hand pressed tightly over her mouth to hold back sobs and cries of distress, she thought bitterly that in truth she had been sold off the very moment she became an adult, treated not like a human being with feelings and hopes, but as nothing more than merchandise, a valuable object to be traded and exchanged for money, status, or land. That single word, merchandise, felt painfully accurate, fitting perfectly the way she was seen and used by those around her. As she walked aimlessly through the greenery, lost in her thoughts and the weight of her situation, a ripe pomegranate fell heavily from a low-hanging branch and rolled to a stop right near her feet. It was deep red, its skin slightly split, showing the juicy seeds inside before it had even been picked. She stared down at the fruit, thinking of herself in that same way, something discarded, something considered faulty or imperfect, left lying on the ground while the rest remained untouched and prized above. When she lifted her eyes to the tree, heavy with clusters of ripe, glowing fruit that shone like rubies in the sunlight, she noticed a thin, delicate line of smoke curling slowly upward into the clear blue sky. Along with it came a scent she recognized instantly. The distinct, rich smell of tobacco, mixed with something earthy and warm. Wondering who could possibly be smoking within the private, restricted grounds of the garden, where guests rarely wandered, and workers were supposed to stay in their assigned areas, she followed the winding trail of smoke and fragrance, which mixed beautifully with the sweet aroma of the fruit and the fresh green scent of grass and leaves warmed by the sun. Rounding a bend lined with thick bushes and blooming flowers, she stopped abruptly and froze in place, her breath catching in her throat. There, sitting comfortably against the trunk of a large tree and looking completely at ease, was a young man holding a lit cigarette between his fingers. He appeared entirely unbothered by the world around him, as if nothing and no one could disturb his peace, yet he was undeniably handsome in a way that caught her breath, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and dark hair that fell loosely over his forehead. The soft wind moved gently through his hair and clothing, giving him an air of freedom and quiet strength that she had never seen in anyone before.